Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss, host of the program comes on at 2 o'clock here at allpointstv.com. We are here to do another segment of the program called, and we're here to do the program, and I'm forgetting what the name of my program is.
What's going on?
You don't hear that Miller Blake sometimes. Yeah, what's going on? And we're here at this studio that we come to you every day, every Monday, rather, from 2 to 3. And I'm so excited, quite frankly, because today we are proceeding the program called Satura's Black History Corner. I can remember their name. I can remember the name of their program. And they come on around 3:30. And they're still around about 4 o'clock, and then they will be off to do other things. Want you to watch all the programs here at allpointstv.com because I can tell you something that goes on behind the scenes. I see a lot of people doing a lot of work here at the studio. John is a technician here. He works very hard behind the scenes. They get a lot of credit for what he does, but without him, we can't really do anything here at the studio. And people are coming in and doing research and preparing for the program. And when we come on the air, if we can remember what the shows are that we're doing, then we come before you and present what we hope will be some very useful information. I'm going to be talking about at least 2 topics. I'm not sure how much time I'll have to spend on a third topic, which will be one I covered this week on my Facebook post. But I want to start off with what I've been promising for a couple of weeks now, and that is to do something on the monetary structure of the country. And I want to try to open up some areas of dialogue on it, because I think this is going to be problematical, and we've got to start to brace now to prepare ourselves, because there's going to be a lot of things happening, I think sooner more so than later, as far as this structure that we are under right now and have been under since 1913. I think we're getting ready to see something very disastrous taking place. And I don't just mean here, certainly it's going to happen here, but it has implications all over the world. And I hope I can do an adequate job of discussing it, because I don't think we really know why we're in such financial straits in this country, and why they're over there once again talking about raising the debt ceiling. And I think this is what forced Boehner out, where the Republicans have been sent there to stop some of this, whatever you want to call what Obama's doing, and who knows what this guy is doing. A lot of things that are happening on this administration. And I don't think we understand some of the undercurrents that are taking place, but there are a lot of things that are going on with the Obama administration. Much of it is anti-American. Anyway, I think that Boehner was forced out because the Republican voters had sent the Republican Party to stop this steamroller. But what I found out in my research is that this situation is so bad right now that it really cannot be stopped. This train that's left the station is running on automatic pilot. And I'm going to try to show why I say that before we get off the air today. And I want to cover that first, because I'm not sure how much time it will take to go through some of it. But I want to make some points I don't think anybody else is making. And I want you to stay tuned, because I think we need to know what's ahead. And this is, I'm not sure how long it's going to be up the road, how long they can postpone the inevitable, but I can tell you something, that those are some more chickens that eventually are going to come home to roost. In other words, the collapse is inevitable and it's unavoidable. And when I began to do the research on this piece, I had some doubts about it, but I don't have any doubt about it now. I think that it's very conclusive that we are on a road of no return. We're not going to be able to return this train back to the station, so to speak, because it has already left the station, and it is running full steam ahead with a man of his own. It's no longer being piloted by anybody in Washington. And that's the thing that is that really jumped out at me as I was doing the research for this discussion today. Let me say a couple of things. Let me say, first of all, that I want to distinguish between corrupt politicians and a system that has been corrupted, because that's a different type of thing. With politicians, you're talking about people, and they can be turned in and out because of their own corruption. So you can change the individual, change the party, you can make some adjustments that way. But when you have a system that has been corrupted, then the tenets of the system itself has to be overthrown, so to speak, in order to stop that from transpiring down the road and playing out the way it is playing out. So I want to talk about pre and post. I want to talk about a date here, pre-1913 and post-1913. In the pre-1913 period, you had a number of people that were certainly in the political structure that were corrupt. I think that John Adams was an example of that. The second president. It didn't take long for the problems that we began to see beginning to be ferreted out of what had been created, ingeniously created by the framers, who understood power and understood how you had to disperse power. You had to regulate power, hold it down, and chain it to the moorings of the Constitution. They knew all of the tendencies of human nature in terms of going out of control because they had studied it. They knew what had happened in the past. They were aware of the Greek experience. They had understood what caused the collapse of the Roman Empire in 476. And so they were trying to, and then they had suffered under the British Empire, and they were trying to avoid all the things that happened in history. And part of it was just the fact that power has a tendency to, those who are using power have a tendency to want to grow it, no matter what the limits are placed upon it. People want to get in power and they want to grow their influence. And over time, those restraints are broken, and before you know it, you have tyranny. So what they wanted to do was to make sure they put restraints in as much as they could to prevent that from happening here. And it's really amazing when I read the Constitution, trying to look at it through their eyes, and having done some research on it again because of the controversy going on right now with the Second Amendment. I went back and researched that again. I had already read a lot of things on it already, but I had to do some more research on that to see why the Second Amendment, the one that says that a militia that is, you have to have that to maintain the liberties of a free people. It says that the right to bear arms shall not be abridged. Now that means that you can't do anything with limiting the right to bear arms, and that includes even the crazies getting arms. It also means that you cannot have these background checks. It's absolute. Now, if they want to alter it, then they have to do something without being arbitrary about it. They have to amend the language and add to it the particulars that include the exclusions. In other words, you just can't arbitrarily, as the president's talking about doing right now, you just can't decide that you're going to do an executive agreement and then you're going to limit the right to bear arms based upon some fiat law that you passed. The Constitution has to be changed.
Isn't that? I have never heard of a president thinking he has a right to do that with his pen and his phone. I never understood anybody who had. You might have issue with the Second Amendment. That's aside. But this man I will do
So
what
he's
I
lawless.
want to, and you can't stop me.
That's
You're
right.
just going to have to suck it up and like it. Well, I don't see where he can get away with this.
Yeah, and John, if they had any kind of respect for the Constitution and respect for rule of law, they would have impeached Obama a long time ago.
He's hiding behind, basically, he's the first black president.
Yeah, that's what
and he knows, and the first thing he's going to go out to anybody who criticizes that.
He's lawless, and you're right about that. He is hiding behind the fact that he's the first. Well, he's the noted first black president. Of course, we've had some others that were under, some people that were under the surface, not admitting to their ancestry. We've had a lot of mixing going on in the country over the years, and some of the ones these were not people like Dozell who were white and trying to pass for black. There was a person that had black according to the definition at that time used by Jefferson, the bloodline, how much blood you have on one side and what made you a black person, the 1/8, 1/16 kind of definition of blackness. There was some that had that, but they passed. You had a choice, and like Obama had a choice. Obama could have passed. Obama could have claimed his American side of his identity, and that would have been his mother's side, not his daddy's side over in Kenya. But now it's convenient because the politics have changed in the country, and now there's an advantage if you're black. I know a lot of blacks are not going to agree with this. After having the Million Man March last Saturday, we were trying to act like that Bull Connor was still in power all over the country. But there's been a reversal, almost an inside-out kind of arrangement. I mean, those that were down are now up, and those that were up are now down. And they've changed some of the ways in which they advantage different groups in this country, and blacks are being advantaged in this country in many ways. And I think that's indisputable. Well, anyway, we're talking here about the framers and how they were trying their best to nail down all these boards to make sure that power did not get out of control. Power doesn't get out of control, the ones wielding power. So they tried to make sure they did everything they could. And I think it's very enlightening to understand the placement of the Second Amendment. We talk about the Second Amendment having done X, Y, and Z. I wonder how many persons even are aware of the fact that when the Second Amendment was drawn up, there was it was drawn up to read one way by the Congress of the United States, and then when it was sent to the states for ratification, it read a different way. And the words were the same, but the comma was put in a different place. In fact, what happened with the Second Amendment is that two different versions of the Second Amendment was ratified. The version by the Congress was one that had a comma after the word militia. So it says a militia, comma, that is necessary for to protect the free people's liberty. Because of that, it's saying here, then the right to bear arms shall not be abridged. And that's an absolute statement. It's the same statement that was passed by the states, but without the comma. And it reads a little bit different without the comma because then the meaning is much more clear. And that would be when it says a militia necessary for the liberty of a free people, maintain the liberties of free people, the right to bear arms should not be abridged. Now, what's the difference between those two, since there's only a comma that separates the two readings? Well, in the second reading, the one that's passed by the states without the comma, it makes it more clear and more absolute that the intention was to make the whole people the militia. That was the intent in the first place, but you can have an argument about it given that period that's in the one that's proposed by the members of the House and members of the Senate at the time this was being proposed for ratification. In other words, that separation of the word militia from the rest of it, you could argue, if you're not aware of what the framers said about it, you could argue a little bit more forcefully, although the argument would not be true based on being able to go to what they stated about it the argument would not be true. But you can certainly make an argument that that comma is significant in terms of how it separates that part from the rest of the reading. But I read the writings of the framers. Hamilton, by the way, who wrote 51 of the Federalist Papers out of the 85 that were written. Alexander Hamilton wrote 51 of them. James Madison wrote 29, and then John Jay wrote the other 5. There were 85 of them altogether. Well, I read Federalist Paper 29, and that Federalist Paper talks about the Second Amendment, although it had not been proposed. I mean, we didn't have it in the Constitution yet because it was being written to get the Constitution ratified. And we don't have the amendments to the Constitution starting until 1791. So they were discussing it, but it had not been placed in the Constitution. But in reading the 29th Federalist Paper, signed by Publius, which was a synonym for the name of Hamilton. They're writing under these assumed names because there was some, danger, the environment and so on. Because they had done a lot more at their convention they were supposed to do. They had gone to the convention to revise the Articles of Confederation, and there was some controversy going on around the country because they had gone beyond their mandate, deciding that the articles were so flawed that they had to throw it out. But the 29th paper, Federalist Paper, did not really give a whole lot of clarity to what the intentions were. But when you go and read those statements made by the framers, Richard Henry Lee, for example, who was one of the co-authors of the Second Amendment, what he wrote, I think it makes it very clear. But it's made clear by others too. What John Adams said, what Samuel Adams stated, and what George Washington stated. And I quoted them in an article I did on this particular piece on Facebook. Because I wanted people to understand that there is no doubt about what is called for in the Second Amendment. And that what's called for is very clear. You cannot in any way impede the bearing of arms in this country, the way it reads. Even the persons that are out here that are, sick, like that person was in Oregon. I'm sorry, but the language does not allow for shall not be abridged. You got to change. Look. In the Constitution, there was a prohibition against direct taxation. In Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, it strictly forbids a direct tax placed upon people. The framers knew what that would do. It meant you would enslave the people. If you could if you put a direct tax on the people, you would, in effect, enslave the people. And I'm going to be trying to prove before I get off the air today that is exactly what has happened in this country.
I just read something just as you were talking, so something popped up, I got a mail, and one of the store articles I could take you to is that this tax center says that 45% of Americans this year will not pay federal income tax. And yet they're always saying, the rich don't pay their fair share. Well, the other ones, like Trump's plan, for you don't have to pay for this certain amount if you don't make a certain amount each year. Those people are already not paying taxes.
Yeah, John, I'm against. I don't like Trump's plan in that one regard. I don't like anyone being exempted from having some skin in the game. And when politicians do that, what they're doing is they're placing a percentage of the population on the sideline who will therefore have no vital interest in being the overseers of what the government does by having no monetary interest in what the government does because it doesn't affect their resources one way or the other. And I think that's a divisional type of thing where you set up a kind of class structure in the tax system. I'm against that. I think that's a problem. That's a problem that pits us against each other. Everyone should have some stake in the game, and everyone should pay taxes. If anybody's going to pay taxes, then all should pay. at some level.
You know, take the strip the tax code totally down to nothing. Basically, say you earn this much, you pay this much. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, no deductions whatsoever. You just pay this straightforward. That way, you know, and then don't give all these. Don't wait for the end of the year or whatever to send money back, and everybody's anxiously waiting that. Let them have more. I always thought that was bizarre. People are so gleeful about their income tax.
About getting your money back.
But what I thought was weird is everybody else look at earned income credit. You know that's money they never earned, taken from somebody else to being given to them.
Yeah.
I don't see how that's equitable, how that's fair.
No, and Carson has a better plan in that regard. I'm not saying his total tax plan is better than Trump's, but in that regard, what he's advocating is better than what Trump is doing. That is that if you say 10%, we all pay 10%. Well, the rich pay a little bit more based upon that percentage because they make more, but 10% is the amount of tax everybody pays is equitable, but it doesn't mean that the amount is the same for all of the taxpayers. A person making $10 pays $1. A person making $100 pays $10, and you see what 10% of the other income levels would be. So everyone would have some tax that they pay. Now, when I get down the road a piece, if I can get there, we're going to talk about what happened in 1913 because something else kicked in at that point that was not intended by the framers. Don't forget in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, that they had prohibited in the Constitution, forbade in the Constitution, that there would be a direct tax upon individuals. In other words, taxing your labor, because then if people are being taxed for their labor, and they put a direct tax upon your earnings, what is happening there is that you're being enslaved to the extent that you're being taxed based upon what you produce. And therefore, they forbade that. The government had to get its money elsewhere. And that really is why that's really why they had a rebellion in 1790 and 1791 when they had the Whiskey Rebellion, because the government always needs money, and they could only get money through the excise tax, taxes on whiskey and things like that. And people were making whiskey in these mountains, like in Pennsylvania, and they were trying to find some revenue that they could use in order to fund the government. And one way to do it was to put a tax that was where it was not prohibited, but they could not tax income. And when they put the tax on the whiskey, then that led to a rebellion. Led to first of all, it was a Shays Rebellion before the government was even set up.
Yeah, that's
under the Confederation, 1786.
There's a say. My friend brings that up. They always talk about the grandness of the founders and how freedom, if loving they were. And he goes, "Yeah, look at this. As soon as they got in power, they took away taxing people too."
Yeah,
he said they were no different than the king. I mean,
John, they were afraid of their own humanity. You know, when they passed those prohibitions against government abuse, they were doing as much to restrain themselves as they were doing those that would be the posterity, those coming after them, because they knew human nature, and they were nailing the boats down against their own abuse of power more so than they were those who come after them, because they knew that they were equally as capable of being outlaws in government as anyone else was. You know, I think it was Jefferson that said that the reason why you have government is to stop the bully from intimidating the individual. But then when you set government up to stop the bully, you then have to keep government from becoming a legalized version of the bully. And so they were aware of the potential for the government to get out of control, and they were trying their best to restrain it.
Ask any businessman if he considers the government, when he has to pay licensing fees, a licensing procedure, some kind of costs attached to opening up a business for filing fees and stuff like that. If there's any real difference between the government and the mob, basically, most are saying if you don't pay us, we're gonna beat you down. So how is it any different? That's all they are, because they wear suits and you go to the place.
That's the difference.
Everybody
right
knows where to go to. That's the difference.
That's
but otherwise,
the
principle behind it's the same.
Yeah, the mafia. I was listening to this person named James. I think it's James Fair or James Fair, and he claims that he's one of the shooters in the Grassy Knoll when they killed President Kennedy. And he makes a strong case. He was in the Dealey Plaza that day that Kennedy was killed on the 22nd of November 1963. He makes a strong case that he's one of those shooters. Anyway, he's in prison right now, and nobody wants to open up the case and dig into it because they've already concluded that the Warren Commission report is authentic. But being a mafia member, he said that the mafia could do some things, and they were this instrument and so on. But he said that there's nothing like the government. He said they are the number one group along that line, and they are that group. I mean, if the American people understood, I mean, the research that I did, I mean, it really was quite astounding to see how criminal this whole enterprise is. It's actually a scam.
What's the government's purpose? I mean, isn't the government supposed to be like there to make sure they're safeguarded contracts, make sure they're enforced, and also to, in my opinion, that's from my reading of it, and also prevent foreign nations from invading us, which we already see that it's failing miserably in doing that. And matter of fact, they're trying to transform us into like basically making us the bad guys for opposing that. But then also basically they are the mob. They are the mob because they have the color of authority behind them. We respect that. I mean, there is no difference between them and a mobster. I mean, they will put you in prison, and which means you're gonna be part of the system, but maybe the mob would kill you. But let's face it, if you deal with the mob on other things, you're going to actually get the goods and services you want, not being forced on. I mean, the government's forcing for things that, do you sit around sitting there, gee, I want to put a building onto my property. I want to go get a building permit. Do you actually think that I really want to go get that permit? No, they make it a necessary part. If you want to get this done, they're gonna penalize if you don't. So you don't sit around and desire a damn permit just for a permit's sake. You have to do it because otherwise they'll make you tear your building down. But
yeah, John, you see, you understand this. It is a mob. They are a mob. The government is a mob, and you see it everywhere. But you're taught to look away and not see the mobsterism that's taking place. I mean, look at Kim Davis in Kentucky. Now the law was that same-sex marriage was not in the state of Kentucky. It was in some of the other states because some of the other states, through their legislatures, had taken it upon themselves to endorse that in those particular states, which was fine. They have the right to do that as a self-governing people. It's not something that is in fact listed in the Constitution that's given to the federal government, nor implied that they will have that particular right. It certainly is not enumerated in Article 1, Section 8. Which lists, there are 18 different clauses there. It lists the things the federal government can do, and it says the things that are, and then in the 10th Amendment it says those things that are not expressly given to the federal government, nor expressly prohibited to the states. Therefore, those things reside in states and to the people they're in. So, marriage is a state issue. And when Kim Davis was first elected to the clerk position in Rowan County, Kentucky, she was following the law of Kentucky. And same-sex marriage was within the purview of a religion. She was elected to serve in that particular capacity. And then 5 renegade judges decided that they were going to exercise power that does not accrue to them under the Constitution and rule that the law on the book was unconstitutional. Don't forget now, the court cannot make law. It only interprets law. And so the court came in with no law being there and simply made a fiat ruling. And then when Kim Davis decided not to follow the ruling, the judge, Judge David Bunning, his name should live in infamy forever, decided to put her in jail. Now, most persons were writing on Facebook, on Twitter, and those other accounts saying she was put in jail for defying the law. And I would ask them on those different servers, tell me what the law is, since you are so sure she was violating the law. What is the law? What does the law state? Where can I find it? And they go out and come back, couldn't find any law, because there is no law. She was put in jail for defying her rulers. They stated out of their mouth what you would do in this country. And if that is not done and you disobey them, then that is what awaits you. But they were dealing with a person that had a strong commitment to her faith. And what she was doing in jail was celebrating the fact she had a chance to be a witness. And that's what they encountered on. Somebody would not kowtow. And the longer you put people in jail based upon some strong belief, the more people that are of that belief, you attract to that. And that's why they had let out of that jail, because she was becoming a martyr while she was being put in there. And then people began to gather around her, and it creates a problem. Civil disobedience. And people begin to defy the law, and then it gets out of control. And you find out they're not in control as they make it out to be. They're not in control. You're in control. But because of the way they can put the appearance on, they make it seem like five people can say that 320 million people will do this way. Well, I don't think so. If 320 million people decide otherwise, you see, it's the viewpoint of their power that's also a part of the power dynamic and apparatus in this country. So anyway, I'm making this point that they could not tax you directly because it was prohibited by the Constitution. So guess what they did? They didn't go in there and then began to do what they're doing with the First Amendment, where they're just simply doing things through, these fiat things they're doing, Obama talking about executive privilege, things like that, because if they had done that and taken people's money, and they can read the Constitution where they could not do that, people would be up in arms. So in that case there, they went and amended the Constitution and did so in 1913. And I will tell you this, in 1913, the web of this country, which was a web that was made of the state governments and the federal government, that is the federal system, the state in relationship to the federal government. When it changed the way the money that accrues to the federal government, at that point, the web of those two units was shaken fundamentally by the federal government passing the 16th Amendment. And there's a question about whether or not that even was passed legitimately, because it looks to me like some of the ratification did not really meet the smell test. You can certify that it was ratified because that's the end result that you want. But the Constitution, there are four ways to ratify the Constitution. It's only been ratified in one particular part of the process that's actually spelled out in Article 5, and that is that an amendment is proposed by 2/3 of both houses of Congress. 2/3 of the Senate today would be 67 senators. 2/3 of the House today would be 290 members of the House, 290 members of the House of Representatives. And then once they propose it, that's all they can do. They cannot ratify it on the national level because the states want to make sure they have something to say about it. And if you notice it, every time something is going to be approved, the states want their voice heard. And that's also true in terms of this treaty that they went around, and that's illegal also. That's unconstitutional. That process is outlawed by the Constitution. You can't do it the way they're doing it. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. You have to have 2/3 of the senators to ratify a treaty. And the president cannot veto their objection to it. All that is illegal. So you're talking about a mob? Yes, it is a mob. And the only reason they don't go to jail is because they're not likely to put themselves in jail. But if the people understood how lawless the government was, and I'll be honest with you, and I talk about this all the time, and we're both aware of a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that are criminal, But I'll be honest with you and tell you that I was astounded at the level of criminality once I did the investigation, more so, and did the research into how the monetary system operates in this country. Now, let me tell you this, something that will be a beginning point into this part of the discussion about why I say that it's one thing to have criminals that are the politicians. They are basically, and they are definitely criminals. In fact, you can't be a part of the apparatus in the federal structure and not be criminal, because the whole apparatus is criminal. That's why none of them want to stand up there to the House speakership right now, because if they do, I got to tell you something, they can't do anything. Let me see if I can tie that together later on, but they really cannot disapprove of the budget. And say they have to continue to increase the debt ceiling. They have no other choice in it. But see, the American people do not realize that, so they think we send them up there to stop this spending out of control, and all they're doing is agreeing to keep raising the debt ceiling. I'll tell you this, every time there is a meeting at the debt ceiling, it will be raised. There will never be a time where we reach the debt ceiling and it stops at that point. It's impossible.
You know, I think we just should see finally we could pass a law that says if you pass or allow the debt ceiling to be raised, you're not going to get charged for where it's at now, maybe because you didn't vote for it. But if you allow this vote to go on to raise it, whatever we can figure that the average person will have to pay for it down the road, you're going to get twice with that cost.
Yeah,
twice.
Well, John, you're not really right here in this part here. And I'm going to try to explain why that's what Trump and Carson and Farina and the others and all of the other person looking at it think that they can do. Donald Trump thinks that you can grow yourself out of this because he thinks we just got bad trade deals, and that's how we got into the quagmire that we're in. I thought so too, but I have to tell you something that was a shock that I got. Let me tell you something that's happening here. And why this is going to end badly, and why the framers were so hesitant. I mean, they weren't even hesitant. They were absolutely against the creation of a central bank. Now, you notice that in 1913, they passed the 16th Amendment. You should not be surprised that in the same year you have the Federal Reserve System that is set up. Because you see, you can't have one without having the other. If you're going to have a federal income tax, you have to have a bank. And the reason why they want to have a federal bank is because by having a federal bank, you can take the restraints off of government. Because government is restrained not only through the check and balance system, the aggregation of power on one level, and then putting some other power somewhere else on another level, like in the federal government, some powers, and then on Article 1, Section 8. And then in the state level, you have those powers delegated to the states based upon the fact it wasn't given to the federal government. And that's in Amendment 10. So anything that's not enumerated, those powers are within the state. But also, you can limit the power of the government by eliminating the purse of the government. And government does not want to have, people in government want to have their powers to expand. And they cannot do that to the extent that they're now able to do it until 1913. But what happens in 1913 is something very, very crucial to understanding why this train cannot be stopped and why they absolutely cannot keep from raising the debt ceiling. It's how you create money in the country. In fact, you don't create money. There's no money in the system. Currency is in the system. This is not money. There was an economist that put a game together to make the point. I want to bring the point a little closer to you. And they put some monopoly paper down there, some monopoly money down there, put the currency, the U.S. currency down there, and then put a gold coin down there. And they asked 5-year-olds and they asked professors to tell the difference between what is the difference they see between two of the three. And it's really interesting what the two groups said. The kids got it right. The professors got it wrong. What the professors said, these are the ones teaching economics, like Krugman. The one that got a Nobel Peace Prize in economics, he didn't know anything. I can tell you right now, they don't know anything. They absolutely don't know anything. Because they don't even understand how currency is created. But I'm going to show you how it's created. But it's not money. Now don't forget in that experiment, they put the person put down monopoly money, quote unquote. The currency put down next to that, and then put down a gold coin. And he asked the two groups, these are some children and these are some professors, to tell the difference between the three. The professor said, well, the currency, there's the dollar bills in your pocket, have intrinsic value, wherein gold, is not in the money stream, and so therefore it doesn't have value. And of course, this over here is play money, and therefore it doesn't have any value. They asked the 5-year-olds to make a distinction between the three, and the children said the coin is different from the other two because the other two are paper. Now, where does the paper come from? And that's where the scam is. Let me tell you where the paper comes from, that paper in your pocket. Because you'll now understand that Samuel Lee Jackson, that's advertising Capital One on television, asking what is in your wallet, and you're supposed to say you got the Capital One card. It doesn't matter whether you got the card in your pocket or whether you have the currency in your pocket. Neither one of them is money. And both of them represent the same thing. I'll tell you what it represents in just a minute. Because what I found, what shocked me in doing this research, and I am absolutely right in what I'm saying. I'm absolutely right. What shocked me was how the monetary system works in this country. You see, what happens with the currency in your pocket is that the Treasury Department issues a bond, B-O-N-D. And a bond is just a short word. What a bond is a glorified IOU note. That's all it is. It's a glorified IOU that says that creating this IOU, it'll be paid at some time down the road into the future. Okay? So it's an IOU. The banks come to the Treasury and they purchase the IOU and then take it to the Federal Reserve, which writes a check and take the IOU from the Treasury Department and add it to the IOU that's over in the Federal Reserve system. And it writes a check on an account that has nothing in it. John, the account doesn't have anything in it, and the Federal Reserve writes a check on an IOU and issues a check in the place of the IOU, and that's how currency is created.
Yeah, and it's like, and then we pay for the price of the printing and everything else of the money, which is considerable cost.
Yeah.
Then when they turn around, they give it to the banks for nothing, and they turn around and lend it to us with a high interest rate attached to it.
Here's what happens at the next step. Here's what happens at the next step. So the banks, which are the conduits from the treasurer to the bankers, to the big banks, they carry it to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve writes a check. The check in the form of the currency. They write the check out of an account that has nothing in it. There's nothing in the account. All that's in the account is IOUs. That is your debt. The banks then take the IOU, they write a check, and the banks take the currency, because that's what puts the currency into circulation through the banks, with a 6%. You can go online and read the Federal Reserve's post. Go on the internet and read on their wall. It'll tell you that the currency is created with a 6% interest paid to the banks. Now, keep in mind what has happened before that. The IOU over here, that's not money. They buy the IOU and carry it over here to the Federal Reserve. That's not money. It is created out of thin air, and they're charging interest on that which does not even exist, on an account that has nothing in it. And they create this monopoly money and put some different pictures on it and put it out here as if it has intrinsic value. Now, I'm going to prove that that's currency and not money, because money has all the qualities, currency has all the qualities of money except one. Currency, in order for what money has in it, it has durability, meaning that it's not a cellophane paper you can ball up and it might tear apart. It has to be durable. It's in different people's pockets. It still is, it's got to be durable, able to withstand some stress. It's got to be portable also, because you can't be carrying around, heavy, bars. Used to trade, bars, but how do you carry it around in your pocket? It has to be divisible, meaning that, that's why the barter system doesn't work, because if a person got a fish and a person got a cow, you can't have that bartering system, because how do you divide the cow up to get the fish? And the cow is bigger than the fish, and you don't want to trade a cow, which is this much, and then have this much traded for it. So how do you divide that up?
I had a math professor tell me it's because of people doing bartering and doing trade. That's how come modern mathematics came into existence. Because years ago, people used to be able to say, "Oh, you do this, and you get this whole cow." Well, then later on, somebody else said, "Well, I only want a portion of the cow because I can't use the whole cow." Okay, but I'll do this much for that.
Yeah.
Then later on, they said, something's got to be better than this, because
Yeah.
we're walking around carrying this rotten carcass with us. So I know, that's what it was.
Yeah, the barter system wouldn't work for that very reason.
Fractional currency.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. It wouldn't work for that very reason, because you have disproportionality in the trade. And how do you get the equal value when you're trading different things? And how do you know what how do you do that? So it has to be divisible. And it has to be fungible, meaning that if it goes in your pocket, it has to have the same value in your pocket as it is in my pocket. A $5 bill is the same $5 bill with the same amount of buying power, based upon the fact that the government backs up and make the producers take it. That's the only reason why it has no value. There's no value in the currency, because it does not have one thing that money has in addition to what currency has. See, currency and money all share the same qualities except one. The one that currency doesn't have, that money has, is that it must have intrinsic value that does not lose its value over time. And what has happened to the currency? Now, I know this is a kid. I used to buy as a kid. I used to buy cookies we used to say I'm going to get me some 2 for a penny cookies. And you get 2 big moon cookies. They used to have all kinds of cookies. Those cookies were so good at that time. All of them were soft. You get all the cookies now are so like break your teeth. But they had them in a big jar. We used to go as a kid, go in the store, and we say, I want 5 2 for a penny cookies. There'd be 10 cookies, and they'd be those big ones too. Now those cookies cost $1. Now the ingredients in the cookies have not changed. What has happened is that currency, which is not money, does not maintain its intrinsic value over time. In fact, it loses its value because it is not money. Money doesn't lose its value over time. Gold and silver, for example, they found some gold. I think it was in the Caribbean. One of the ships that sank on the way back to Europe, having come over from Spain, and they found that where that ship was down there and saw the treasure down there, the gold. That gold still has intrinsic value, but the currency at that time period, I would like somebody to name it. What is the currency that they had at that time? You see, the currency doesn't last. There have been about 600 approximate fiat currencies in history. Every last one of them has gone down to zero. And this was going down to zero also.
Well, I'll tell you what. I remember this person telling me about gold. For 1 ounce of gold back in the 1800s would buy a good man's business suit, a decent businessman suit. It was like $5-6. One piece, because that's what gold is valued at. Nowadays, it's like $1,200 an ounce, I think, roughly. Now you can buy probably 2 men's suits for that same price. So basically, 1 ounce of gold will get you 2 suits. So it's the purchase ability with that gold has remained constant. That's been demonstrated throughout history. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a gold bear or a gold bug or whatever to believe that, but it's a truth.
You're right.
And so, the fiat currency basically is, I was talking to Mark Thornton one time, an economist down at Auburn University. He was actually Visa's Institute, connected to the University of Auburn down there in Auburn, Alabama. And I said, basically, he said the reason why when we're off the gold standards, it just opens up to politicization. Politics will play such a role in what money really means and with the value of it.
I won't be able to get to that today, I don't think, but I'll tell you, we'll get to this next week for sure, because that's another discussion we got to have about what happened there. There's something that went on in 1944. And that would be at the Bretton Woods conference that they had in New Hampshire. That was a very big part of what went on here, and I think it shows you the criminality that's involved in it. And we have a lot to answer for in this country because of what has happened and what's getting ready to happen around the world based upon that conference that was held in 1944 and that we didn't keep our word to. But all the money, all the currency that's born into existence because it's created out of thin air and put into circulation from nothing, backed up by nothing, with a interest attached to it, it means that all currency in circulation right now is in circulation based upon debt that's attached to it. In other words, if you put the currency next to the debt would be the currency, which is the principal, plus the interest, you see, that has accrued upon the currency. Don't forget the currency is born in debt with attachment of 6% interest. And everywhere it goes from that point forward, there's interest attached to the money. So that there is no currency in circulation does not have interest attached to it. And that is really where your debt is housed in. Now, what they would have everybody believe is that they're out there borrowing this money from different countries. So much over here, so much over there. That's not what is really where the debt is. The debt is that the debt is being borrowed from the future. See, IOUs are what you pay in the future. So therefore, the debt is that which is going to be paid by the children. They're not borrowing it from anything current. they're borrowing from those who will have to pay the debt off once they are born into the workplace. And it means then that the currency has enslaved the entire population of this country. Everyone is a slave in America.
And that's
everybody.
And it does. Okay, if we had done it the way Congress wanted us to initially have, the founders want us to have it, the debt would be owed back to the country. Now it's just actually handed over back to a group of individuals with very little oversight that we have very little oversight of. That's why I understand it.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, John, if you put the currency next to the debt would be here and the currency would be there. Now, if you pay the principal, if you pay the currency, if you pay debt off, what happens when debt is paid off, the currency disappears. The currency disappears when debt is paid off, because you see, the currency is a debt. That's what shocked me in doing this research. In other words, you're walking around when Samuel Lee Jackson asks, "What's in your wallet?" What's in your wallet is debt. Now you would say, okay, then why would someone take debt for things that have intrinsic value? For example, cookies. Well, they take it because they're forced to take it. That's where government comes in. Now, they don't say out in the open that, if you don't take this for a transaction, you will, in fact, go to jail, but that's what it means. This says, this is legal tender. And that means that you will take this monopoly money. That's what it is. It's monopoly money with different pictures on it. I could say a lot of things about that, but I want to make one last point before we get off the air, because the other guest, Satura's Black Church Corner, comes on at 3:30, and I have to get out of here on time, and they're already in the studio. And we're glad to see them here, because I have to run home and watch the program. But you have monopoly money out here that has debt attached to it, and if you pay the principal off, what you're doing by paying the debt off, because the currency is a debt, when you pay the debt off, you're crashing the currency. So if the principal is up here and you're paying it off, you're contracting the currency to the extent that you're paying down the principal. Now the interest is still here. But by crashing and paying off the principal in circulation, when you pay off the debt but don't pay off the principal that accrues on the debt, because the money is a debt. When you have the debt being paid without paying the principal, you're actually crashing and eliminating the currency. The principal will collapse on its own, because if there is no currency, then the principal cannot be paid, because this is what you're using to pay the principal. To crash this makes this collapse. And that was what stunned me when I saw it. When I saw how it is set up. In other words, it's impossible in Washington, to be in Washington right now, not to agree to QE1, QE2, which is printing money. And what is really astonishing is that you're taxed everywhere without you even knowing you're being taxed. For example, when the Federal Reserve, when the federal government comes in and tax money, and they take it out of your account and you send it to Washington, you know the money is missing because you sent that to Washington and they took it out of the account. Really, they didn't take it out of the account. You just simply did some calculation on it was a bookkeeping thing where some O's and numbers were moved, just moving of numbers. Okay? But here's the other part of the taxation, is that, you see, inflation is a taxation in the money. Because if you add currency out into the mainstream, you dilute the value of the currency already out there, and therefore you are taxing within the money itself. Let us say there's a tax in the money because they take the money out. They take the money. They take the buying power out of the money while leaving the currency in your pocket. So it's a tax also. It's called inflation, but that's how inflation works, where you're being taxed with the money still in your wallet. It is a scam. It is an absolute scam. And when you recognize the criminality that's involved here, you'll see exactly what John said at the beginning of the program, and that is that these persons this is a mob here. And when America finds out what is going on in this country, it's going to really be a problem. But the national debt must go up, because if it does not go up, it will crash on its own weight. And all they are doing, and what they continue to do, is kick the can down the road, making sure it doesn't crash on their watch. But it will eventually crash. Of that, there is absolutely no doubt. When we get together next week, I will be talking about something else down the road a piece in terms of something else that happened, but that's preliminary to what we have to say here about the way the currency operates in this country. Okay, I want you to stay tuned for Satura's Black History Corner that comes on at 3:30. I'll run home to watch it, and I'll be in my little office watching it at that time. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.